Every time Secretary of State Michael Pompeo opens his mouth, the Chinese people love their country even more. What do I mean? Stay tuned for today's video. Hi everybody, my name is Cyrus Jansen. I'm an American expat and China veteran for over 10 years. And in today's video, we're going to be breaking down Michael Pompeo's recent statements about China and explaining why this is actually causing Chinese nationals to love their country even more. Now, if you know me and you're following this channel, you know that I have a passion for both America, my home country, and China, a place that I lived in for over 10 years. And what I want to do with this channel is I want to create videos that help educate people, but more importantly, help bring these two cultures together. When I first went to China in 2007, the United States and China had a great relationship, but unfortunately, the relationship has really entered a very dark period right now. And if you've been following Michael Pompeo's recent Twitter feed, or even the Department of State's recent social media feeds, you'll notice that they are sending a very targeted message. They're sending images like this: America stands tall in the face of the most fearsome challenges. Now, I'm assuming they're talking about COVID-19, and even though America has completely botched their COVID-19 response, Donald Trump and many of the people in the United States government are very keen on telling the American public that it is all China's fault. China is working to take down freedoms all across the world. Unalienable rights are essential. Communists almost always lie. Now, the problem with these graphics, and when you listen to Michael Pompeo, is that it's really hard to take him seriously. Michael Pompeo is a self-admitted liar, cheater, and thief. But again, those are not my words. Let's listen to him admit that himself.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
But now it's time to take you inside the minds of a typical Westerner that really doesn't understand China and how they respond to some of these images. Look at the first comment on this communist almost always lie post, and you can see that this user says, "Tear down the firewall and let 1.4 billion people know the truth." Now, this is one of the most common mistakes that many Westerners make about China. They believe that the 1.4 billion people in China are completely cut off from the outside world, that they have no idea what's going on, when in fact, the Chinese actually know exactly what's going on. They know exactly what Michael Pompeo is saying, and they realize that most of the comments he says about China are actually false. Last year, over 150 million Chinese people made international trips around the world. That is roughly half the population of the United States. In addition to that, there are tens of millions of Chinese living all over the world. In fact, name a major country in the world today that doesn't have a vibrant Chinese community. In addition to that, there are just millions of young Chinese students and youth under the age of 30 that are using VPNs, virtual private networks, and they're actually accessing all of this international data. They're using Facebook, Instagram, all of these things they're using inside mainland China. They're looking at the news sources. Chinese people are very connected. Unfortunately, a lot of Western people think that China is like North Korea. You know, there's no such thing as a North Korean expat or a North Korea immigrant. If you're North Korea, you're in North Korea and you are cut off from the outside world. But China's not. And this is what the reality is. When they see Michael Pompeo lying, they are becoming more nationalistic. They're becoming more proud of being Chinese because they realize what he's saying is not true. And I've seen two recent trends that really highlight this, and I want to share with you. Now, the first is the boom in Hanfu. Now, Hanfu is traditional Chinese clothing, and we can see from January of this year to June, there was an over 300% increase in sales on the popular Chinese app Pinduoduo. Now, the youth in China are embracing these traditional outfits because, again, when people in China are realizing that they are getting attacked from the outside world, and they look and they're inside China and they're seeing the great things that are happening in China, they're becoming more proud of being Chinese. Now, a second trend that also highlights this just happened last week, and that is Huawei has overtaken Samsung as the #1 cell phone producer in the world. Now, when I first went to China, this by far was the most popular phone. Of course, this is the Apple iPhone. And don't get me wrong, Apple iPhone is still tremendously popular in China today. However, there's been a shift in the trend for consumers. They are starting to embrace domestically made products. For instance, Xiaomi, Huawei, these are two Chinese manufacturers that make fantastic phones, and you're going to see a shift where more Chinese people are going to go away from Apple. They're going to go away from Samsung, that's Korean. They're going to go away and they're going to embrace Chinese products and domestic products because they are being more and more proud of being Chinese. But what is it that Secretary of State Michael Pompeo has said that is not true? Well, let's look at his recent speech and kind of break down some truths about this for you.
As we have urged countries to become clean countries so that their citizens' private information doesn't end up in the hand of the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, this is a common theme for the United States government. They're often citing that China is a huge national security risk. I only have two words to reply to this: Edward Snowden.
But Beijing is more dependent on us than we are on them.
Are we sure that China is more reliant on America than America on China? I don't think so. Over the last 3 decades, the American economy has been booming specifically because of a relationship with China. In an earlier YouTube video I made, I looked at the Dow 30, the top 30 companies that are listed on the Dow Exchange, and all of them are manufacturing in China. All of them have connections back to China, and they are more profitable and increasing their market share in America because of the relationship in China. Take this for example. Apple, the most valuable company in the world, has gained $1.5 trillion in market cap over the last 7 years. Do you think that would have honestly been possible without a relationship with China?
People from all over the world still want to come to open societies. They come here to study. They come here to work. They come here to build a life for their families. They're not desperate to settle in China.
That is not entirely true. In fact, many Chinese nationals are actually leaving America and returning back to China, and we have some data to back this up. Now, this graph comes from the Ministry of Education, and we can see over the last 17 years, there's been a tremendous increase in both Chinese nationals that are studying abroad, but also Chinese nationals that are returning home. We can see that in 2017, there were over 6 million Chinese nationals that were studying abroad, but well over 80%, roughly 5 million of them, in fact, returned back to China. And that is the thing that's happening right now. We look at America right now, the instability right now, the racism, the violence, obviously the COVID-19. America is not what it used to be, and it's absolutely ludicrous to say that people are wanting to come to settle down in America right now. People from the outside are looking at America and seeing the struggles, not just COVID, but the racism, everything, and they're realizing that America right now is extremely unstable. Trust me, Chinese people are having second thoughts of sending their kids to university. Chinese families that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars taking SAT prep courses, doing tutoring for 12 years, prepping their kids to go to American universities, are now pulling the plug because of fears of violence and racism and just basically personal safety.
That the ultimate ambition of China's rulers isn't to trade with the United States, it is to raid the United States. China ripped off our prized intellectual property and trade secrets, causing millions of jobs.
The timing of this comment couldn't be more right, because just last week we had the CEOs of Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Google all testify to Congress, and they were asked this one specific question: has China stolen your technology? Now, this is what's amazing. Apple, Google, and Amazon CEOs all testified under oath to Congress and said, we have had no first-hand knowledge and no experience of China actually stealing any of this technology. However, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook CEO, was the only one that's responded differently, and all he said was, Congressman, I believe it's well documented that China has stolen technology. And that's true. It is well documented. However, it's America that's documenting it, and here he is, Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, even himself could not give a specific case of when Facebook was hacked or when any data was actually stolen. He just simply agreed and said, it is well documented, but I have to give this vague answer because essentially Facebook has never had anything stolen. If it really did, that was the perfect opportunity to tell the congressman.
The truth is that our policies and those of other free nations resurrected China's failing economy only to see Beijing bite the international hands that were feeding it.
Now, there's actually some truth in this statement. It is true. When Richard Nixon went to China almost 50 years ago and began this relationship between the United States and China, and in the 1980s, when China started to embrace these capitalistic measures, there certainly was some elements from Western culture that helped revitalize the Chinese economy. However, I would actually say it's America that is biting the hand that has really helped it. You see, America has benefited tremendously, and we can't pretend that only China has gotten rich. America has gotten tremendously rich from their relationship with China as well. It's a two-way street, and America benefited in two ways. The first way is they were able to manufacture their goods for a fraction of the price because of the cheap labor in China. In addition to that, as the Chinese economy grew, American companies then were able to take their products and send them back into China and then also have a very viable market. And that is why some of these major companies like a Disney, like Starbucks, like Apple, like Tesla, why they've really been able to grow phenomenally over the last 10 years specifically, and that is directly because of the Chinese consumers. So with that being said, who's biting whose hand now?
And if we don't act now, ultimately the CCP will erode our freedoms and subvert the rules-based order that our societies have worked so hard to build.
Now this is one argument that I really don't understand. American government is always saying that the Chinese Communist Party is going to erode all of our freedom. America is separate from China. China has no jurisdiction in America right now. And in fact, China has no interest in spreading communism around the world. Let's ask ourselves, which country goes around the world spreading their way of life and their form of government? Well, it's obviously the United States. We have over 600, American army bases around the world. We constantly go around the world spreading our form of government. You should embrace democracy because it's our way and our way is the best. When's the last time you saw China going to other countries around the world telling them, you should go and embrace communism? This is what we do. China doesn't do that. And this is the most fundamental thing that you need to understand about China. China is not anti-democracy for America or any other country. In fact, China really doesn't care what America does. China's basically saying, you do you, I do me. We just don't want your form of government to come into our country. Why? Because we have proven to the world that we have a unique way. We have a unique way that we're doing it, and it's actually working. Over the last 30 years, 80% of the world's poverty alleviation has come from China. Go talk to Chinese nationals. Go talk to the people in China. Ask them about their government. The overwhelming majority of Chinese people support the Communist Party of China because it is not this Communist Party that is like a North Korea. We have to remove ourselves from this stereotype. The Chinese government is forward-thinking, it is constantly changing, and it is improving the lives of Chinese people, it is improving the infrastructure of the cities, but it is different, and unless you spent time in China and spent time talking to Chinese people, you're not going to understand that fact.
Changing the CCP's behavior cannot be the mission of the Chinese people, and free nations have to work to defend freedom.
Now this in fact is one of the most ridiculous things that Secretary of State Michael Pompeo has ever said. He has actually gone out and asked the 1.4 billion people in China to effectively turn their backs against the Chinese government and start a revolution and embrace the American way. Now you have to realize this, Michael Pompeo. Chinese people are looking at America right now, and number one, they're very surprised that the most powerful and richest country in the world has failed to actually handle the COVID-19 outbreak. America was ranked #1 in the world to be able to handle a pandemic. That, of course, never panned out. But in addition to that, we see the violence, we see the racism, we see the unbelievable amount of gun crime. All of these things the Chinese are looking at thinking, wow, this is actually really sad for America. We always looked up to America, and we just see America declining and falling apart. I mean, Chinese people are not looking at America with a vengeance. Chinese people are not saying, we want to destroy America. Chinese people have always admired America, but unfortunately, as America keeps eroding and just effectively shooting itself in the foot, the Chinese are realizing, you know what, maybe we don't want these American things. We're going to start embracing Chinese things. So similar, like I said earlier in this video, they're starting to embrace domestic products, and they're just becoming more proud being Chinese.
That the world cannot be safe until China changes. Now it's up to us.
But ultimately, Secretary of State Michael Pompeo lays it out very clearly what the mission of the United States government is, and that is to go out and change China. And this is really where we're going to see a huge resistance because, again, China is not going to be acceptable to an outside country coming in and essentially telling China how to run their country. This is a huge cultural difference, and you have to go back to Chinese history. You have to realize the Boxers' Rebellion. Educate yourself about why the Chinese are so resistant to foreign interference. This is a big part of Chinese culture. But the reality is that we must accept the fact that there are going to be differences between the United States and China. This is what I've highlighted in many of my videos, and what I want people to realize is that the American government right now, they are trying to go out and say that China is the enemy. This is why Trump has said that it is the China virus. He wants the American public to view China as an enemy, but the reality is that we're biting the very hand that has helped us become the #1 country in the world. America would not be where it is today without this relationship in China, and I'm really worried that the United States is going down this road and they want a Cold War. Now, many people have accused me here on YouTube of being anti-American. I'm not anti-American. I love my country, but I'm very disappointed in the way that we're going, the route that we have chosen to go. I think if you talk to many Americans, they're very frustrated with the current government. They're very frustrated with the future. The future does not look optimistic for the United States. However, in China, their future looks very optimistic. Many more people are optimistic about their future. But what I want to do is I want to create an environment where both the United States and China can work together, because when that happens, the entire world wins. Now, in closing, I want to thank you for making it to this point in the video. If you're new to this channel, I'd love for you to consider hitting that subscribe button. We're making new weekly vlogs about China, its role in society, and again, we are promoting a world where both the United States and China can work together. My name is Cyrus. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you in next week's video.